To the ground, man.
Do you remember Brad Parscale, Trump's former campaign manager? Well, here's the latest headline involving him. I love when Republicans realize they're the bad guys, and then they have that dumbfounded look on their face like,
I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything.
yeah, Brad, your involvement in the 2016 election and helping Trump get elected has directly made the world a worse place. He might have gotten elected without you, but hey, you were part of it. But now Brad is clueless. Now he's confused. I think he's starting to see that he's working for the bad guy. But this is just a great example that Republicans don't know what they're fighting for or who they're actually fighting for. And this TikToker does a great job explaining that.
You're contradicting yourself here, and you don't really seem to have a grasp on what socialism actually is. And don't be too insulted by that, because after all, here in America, half the people don't even know what capitalism is. They think it's just any form of commerce. Individuals with capital own Walmart and Amazon, not the people. You think you actually have control over what they do? They don't give a f***. If capitalism gave the people the power instead of oligarchs, we wouldn't be having shit like Cancer Alley. You think after DuPont poisoned 99% of the population that we're still choosing to be poisoned by them? It has been shown that public support does not affect the likelihood of legislation being passed unless you're wealthy. Does that sound like power for the people? If you are poor for 7 or more years in the US, you only have a 13% chance of escaping poverty. If you are born into poverty in the US, you only have a 4% chance of escaping poverty. And you want to sit there and you're trying to tell me that capitalism gives power to the people?
So this is something that a lot of right-wingers really don't understand. See, in their mind, the idea of the government controlling things is terrifying. But when they're terrified of the government controlling things, what are they really terrified of? I think what they're really terrified of is democracy. Because let's look at the alternative. If it's not the government making decisions about how our economy should run and how society should go about existing, then who is it? Is it going to be random people? No, of course it's not going to be random people. There are people that exist in the world today that have more power and influence than other people. And it is not because of the government. It is because of things like, Jeff Bezos controlling one of the biggest supply chains in the world through Amazon. Maybe that has something to do with it. Maybe it's the idea that there's just a handful of corporations that essentially have monopoly powers over huge chunks of our economy. Maybe those people being able to decide everything without any government involvement would actually be worse because, and I know this is wild, politicians have to get elected, which means that to some extent they have to be somewhat accountable to the people, whereas extremely wealthy individuals, the CEOs of giant corporations, they just have to make a profit. And they just have to keep making a profit. It doesn't matter if they're making a profit under a brutal dictatorship or the paragon of democracy. As long as they're making a profit, they're perfectly happy. And if it's profitable for them to hire private police forces to suppress labor unions, like they did 100 years ago, then they will do exactly that. So this idea that capitalism does anything to give power to people is just absolutely ridiculous. And now at this point, if you're like, but Ben, the government that we have doesn't feel very democratic at all. They all kind of serve the interests of these rich people anyway. Then I would say, yeah, and maybe, hear me out, a giant part of the problem is the fact that politicians go to rich people to finance their campaigns.